Welcome to Leading for Life Stories Season 4. I'm Bob Judson. I'm the host for this podcast, and thank you very, very much indeed for joining me. Whether you're a new joiner or a seasoned listener, then I really, really hope you enjoy the mix of content that we provide. The personal stories, the thematic episodes, and of course, the fantastic guest interviews. If you've been with me since the beginning, then I'm enormously grateful for your loyalty and thank you so much. If you're relatively new to the show, then I really hope you like it, and I hope you find all of it interesting and some of it hopefully useful to you. Please subscribe on whichever channel it is you're using, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a podcast platform. That really helps us boost the show and get it over the hills on the algorithms. So if you can do that for me, I would be enormously grateful. But without further ado, let's go. Welcome back, everybody. I had thought I was going to get you a guest this week for this week's episode, but for a variety of reasons, I've not been able to do that. So I'm back to, I hope, guests next week and for the subsequent few weeks after that. But for now, it's another personal story. And I've got to a point now where I talked quite a lot about Deloitte last time and my life in Deloitte, obviously within limitations of what I can talk about, because I don't really want to talk about the clients and the specific work that I did, because that would be inappropriate. But it was really interesting because when I joined, and I think I said this in the previous episode, I wasn't sure, was this the job for life now on the back of the Air Force that was going to see me out to kind of proper retirement? Or was this kind of Lilypad that I was going to jump onto and then jump off on a continuing journey? And I didn't know the answer to that when I first arrived, and it took me quite a while to kind of feel my way in and sort of find out where I was in status terms and how that was all looking, and whether the job was enjoyable enough and all those kind of things. And I did love it. I thoroughly enjoyed the time I had there. It was a bit mixed. I had some difficult clients and some challenging engagements, which were frustrating and not necessarily where I wanted to be. And there's no doubt, and I don't think this is no comment on Deloitte, this is just generically. And if you come out of the military after 34 years, it's a really, really challenging thing to find a role that gives you anything like the same level of camaraderie and kind of social cohesion that the military does, because that's the thing the military probably does best of all, really, is that real massive team ethos. And so that was very, very difficult to replicate. But other than that, I enjoyed it. I was actually quite enjoying even the commuting from home was a little bit tedious, jumping on the train at very early hours of the morning every day and getting home quite often quite late. But I actually got into a rhythm. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was finding it quite satisfying. What I didn't pay attention to, and this is definitely a kind of life lesson for anybody, I think, not just exiting the military and into some kind of transition, but generally in your kind of career moves, is I'd been in a world for 34 years where I had been looked after from a career management point of view. It was very much the system decided where I was going to go next, looked to try and provide me with challenging appointments, and certainly did its best to make sure I did what I needed to do to continue getting promoted and all those kind of things. So I've got no complaints about the career management system in the Air Force, really. There are a few niggles on the way, and that's obvious, and that's going to be the same in any organization. But basically, it was one of those things that just happened in the background, and I was pretty relaxed about all of that. When I got into Deloitte, I should have paid more attention early on to how does this work here? What am I actually going to need to do to position myself to become a partner if that's a prospect for me? Now, the way that certainly Deloitte works, and I think most of the professional services firms work, is if you want to be an equity partner, i.e. bought in and own the firm, as it were, have a share of the firm, then you basically need to be younger than me. I mean, I joined at 53. I was too old to do the kind of buy-in and then the payback that goes with all of that process. So I could have become a salaried partner, though. And that was definitely on the cards, that I effectively could have just got promoted and been on a better wage, doing more jobs that are in the partnership kind of frame, so accountable for engagements and signing off things and so on and so forth, which wasn't really the case as a director. There was very limited amount of signing off powers that certainly I had in my time there, and I didn't really pay enough attention to that. in all honesty, when I look back on it, you can make an argument that maybe some other people should have helped me a bit more, but I genuinely think they really were very helpful. They looked at using me in the best way they could, in the most diverse way they could, and so on and so forth. But what played out over a period of time was that I should have put myself in a position where actually I was really concentrated on a specific thing or set of things around a specific industry, probably, to really make myself that niche expert that gave me a business case to justify actually, putting myself forward and getting into the partner process to become a partner. And the opportunity for that was definitely there. I mentioned that I was jointly hired, and I sat in the crisis and resilience part of the business, but I was also jointly hired by the global aviation lead. And he was retiring during my time while I was still in the firm. And I wasn't about to become the global aviation lead, but I certainly could have become a senior player in the aviation business and actually helped to form an aviation business as a proper profit and loss business unit, which there wasn't one at that point. There is now. And I didn't do any of that. And the net result was I was used in a very diverse set of roles, in a very diverse set of ways, which was on one level brilliant for me because I learned an awful lot. I learned, a lot about different clients and saw different clients in action, saw a lot of organizations, the way they worked. It set me up quite well for what I do now. But what it certainly didn't do was give me that kind of concentrated, focused area that gave me, if you like, a piece of the pie that I could have then argued that, right, I can make this piece of pie bigger and grow a business and actually generate that as a partner level business case. And had I done that, then I think I would have been 3.5 years in quite a different place. Instead of leaving, I probably would have been staying and moving on. But I got to the sort of 2 year point, and I mean it was quite amusing in some ways because I joined on a salary package that was perfectly good. It was a pretty decent wage and decent bonus and all that sort of thing. And then after 2 years, that reverted, and I got, quote, normalized, unquote, which made me immediately a bit nervous about what does normalization mean. And inevitably, it did mean that I was back onto a better base salary, but actually on a bonus scheme that was essentially the same as the normal all-staff bonus scheme. And that isn't that great, to be honest. I mean, everyone raves about bankers' bonuses and things like that. Professional services bonus is not remotely the same. It's not a huge amount of money, even if actually you're very successful. And so the net result was actually I earned less money in year 3 than I had done in years 1 and 2 overall. And that was not where I needed to be after 34 years in the military. If I'd been smart when I was young and been really good at investing my money instead of spending it, maybe I'd have been in a different position, but I wasn't. And the finance side was very important and continues to be important to me in terms of what I do today, just in terms of paying the mortgage, paying the bills, and having life, etc. So I was very clear that financially this wasn't working as an outcome. It was obvious that I needed to do something a bit different. What I didn't know was what that different looked like. And the good thing was at the end of year 3, by the time this had really manifested itself, I got into a position where I had enough people who I could have very clear conversations with about this. Some of whom were less than helpful, and in terms of they were still overly optimistic about, oh no, it'll be fine. You could do this. You've still got prospects to do this, and this. And I'm going, no, I just don't see that. Because I could look myself at the numbers of people we had, the business I was sat in the crisis and resilience world. There wasn't room for me as a partner there. I had to do something different, and in order to do something different, it was going to take me a couple of years probably of plateaued salary, working really hard as a director to turn around and build a business case that might or might not have been successful to become a partner in the firm, and then probably I'd still be there now if that had happened. But I had a very, very frank conversation with a lady who I'm still very much in touch with, who I hugely admire, called Stacey Winters, who's now an increasingly senior partner in the UK firm. And she was brilliant because we were able to properly have a discussion about what was realistic and what wasn't realistic. And ultimately, she helped me to find a path that was off the Lilypad. So instead of it being that lifelong job and stick there for forever, I thought, okay, the time has probably come to think about doing something different. And what something different looked like, at least initially, was going to be moving out of the firm to be a contractor for the firm. And initially, for the first year of that contract, actually I had an internal and a client facing side to it. So I had a guaranteed number of hours, which gave me a kind of certain level of security and base salary and so on that I could rely on. And I also had obviously an opportunity to do client facing work and be paid on that within the kind of salary structure that was agreed at the time. And that was all great. That looked fantastic. But of course, I wasn't just talking to Deloitte at this stage. And again, I think it's really important in terms of, if I could offer advice to anybody in this space, it would be, you need to be casting your net very widely and looking at, who you're talking to, what kind of advice you're getting. Are people just blowing smoke, at you and giving you stuff you want to hear and so on, rather than potentially setting you to, giving you some real honest home truths and making you think about what you're actually about to do. And I had a few of those conversations, including reverting back to some of the recruiters, the headhunters that I'd spoken to when I was leaving the Air Force. And they were very honest with me in the main. And a couple of them, the stories have sort of stuck with me to this day. One, I remember vividly saying, Bob, you need to bear in mind that you're currently in your mid-50s. You're in a position now where I am being asked, every search that I'm running from a recruitment business point of view is actually looking for 40-something-year-old, generally women or ethnic minorities, not white men who are in their 50s. So be careful what you wish for in terms of what you're actually going to go and do next and how that's going to play out, which I thought was really good advice. And I think it's also very, very true. That it is a thing. I think when you get to be a certain age, if you're pale, male, and stale, as the saying goes, you can be in a tricky place. Now, that's not to say there's not loads of opportunity out there, and I'm a fervent believer that's still the case. But be clear-eyed about what you're leaving to go and do and how you're actually going to go and do it. The other great headhunter conversation that I thought was tremendously useful at the time was over a cup of coffee, one of my contacts saying to me, if you're going to do this and you're going to leave Deloitte and go and do something else, you need to be in a position, ideally, where you have some kind of banker client. You not literally a banker, but somebody who is you can rely on, that is going to be a regular source of income for you. So it gives you a kind of a baseline, I suppose, in terms of income, and then you're adding to that with everything else that you put into your pipeline. And again, I think that's terrific advice. I was when I look back on it now, 7 years on, then without a shadow of a doubt, that has proved to be very important to do and very valuable advice to have had. Because I think if you're not careful and you've got nothing that is a kind of regular, reliable piece of work, it can feel pretty uncomfortable pretty quickly. There was an awful lot of process involved, obviously, in terms of just exiting Deloitte. And some of that was fairly straightforward because I wasn't fully exiting. I was leaving and becoming a contractor. So I stayed with my IT, I stayed with my pass, and all those sorts of things. So effectively, I went away. I had to have a month away from the firm before I could actually then come back as a contractor. That was just a compliance rule. And the day I turned back up as a contractor, then almost instantly, as soon as I logged on, everything turned me into a contractor in terms of my accesses, and all those sorts of things were slightly different because I was no longer a full-time employee of the firm, and that was fine. That was relatively straightforward. But on the side of that, of course, I also had to set myself up as a company. So Bob Judson Consulting Limited was born. I had to do all the things that go alongside that in terms of getting myself an accountant and thinking about all the processes I need in place and the systems I needed in place to be running a small business, which is what I do. And again, that was a steep learning curve, and well, it's a learning curve I'm still on in some ways in terms of managing everything else that goes with it. So where I'm eternally grateful, particularly to Stacey Winters for this, is providing me a very soft landing as I exited Deloitte to go and start doing what I now do, because in enabling me to be a contractor with internal and client-facing opportunities, and therefore a level of base salary, it bought me a year when I was pretty comfortable that I was able to turn around and find the time to start developing other clients, developing and shaping my own business in a rather better way before that internal piece of the Deloitte contract dropped away. I just had a client-facing contract after that, which actually I held all the way through until till the December of 2024, and then that dropped away entirely. So now my Deloitte focus is all Deloitte University, and that's what I did. But actually, that Deloitte University part was also born during that contractor period, because I became an internal facilitator at Deloitte University using some of my UK paid internal hours on an agreed basis to actually go and train people in Deloitte University. So that set me up brilliantly for what has actually become a real key part of my portfolio in terms of the work I actually do as an external facilitator now with the university. So luck was on my side, people were on my side, and that was massively helpful to put me in that kind of place, because much like I said when I left the Air Force, and suddenly, I had that moment where I got my final salary and was unemployed. All of a sudden, now this is another big whoa moment. I've left this blue chip company with this big job, voluntarily stepped away from it to go and do something else, which was a big unknown leap. And luckily, I'm personally kind of blessed with a confident approach to life and a kind of self belief that I can turn my hand to most things and actually make it work, and that's a really good thing. I think it's inevitably true that you have comfortable and uncomfortable moments through this, and I'll definitely talk about more about what I do now on a different episode. But that first step out of the out of the big glass building in London and into a kind of right, I'm now on my own, but working as a contractor back for the firm, was definitely one of those moments where it gave me pause. It did really make me pause and think about, what have I done? Have I made the right decision? Should I just have stuck with this and just sucked it up? I wasn't being badly paid. It was all fine. I like the people. I like the work. So why was I moving? I suppose when I look back now, there's also a little bit of me that was, I'd done 3.5 years. If you look at a military tour, the longest kind of tour you're going to do is probably about that kind of time. And so I did slightly get itchy feet. I was in, right, I've done this now. I need to find a way to make it more exciting and interesting. And I still believe passionately that enjoying what you do, being motivated personally by what you do, is really, really, really important. And therefore, just staying the same just because you can, and potentially ceasing to enjoy it or enjoying it a lot less and just finding its grind, is not where I wanted to be. So that was another piece of the new jigsaw, if you like, that was important, because it was definitely about doing something different, stretching myself again, finding a way to test myself and develop what I did. And the other, I guess, really key thing that came out through all of that process was, and continues to be really important, is the value of networks and the value of networking. And I'm sure I've said it before on one of these episodes that never close doors that you don't need to close. So in terms of leaving Deloitte, I left Deloitte in the best possible way. I still have lots of connections there, I have lots of conversations there, regular touch points where I go back and talk to people. I've done client work since for the firm while I was a contractor. I still regularly do the work at Deloitte University, etc. So leaving well is such an important feature, and not having any kind of bad feeling or regret even about the way you actually step away. You have to manage that. You have to actively manage that. And the network piece for the people is the same thing. Keep preserving and keep refreshing and warming up those connections that are going to be valuable to you, because you never know when you're actually going to need them again, and when you're going to start looking to other people to help support you. If you use LinkedIn as a tool, which I'm sure that majority of people listening to this or viewing this will be doing, then just try and leverage that to the best effect, and keep an eye on your connections. Even if you've got thousands of them, find a way to actually review them periodically. Search, use the search systems in the in LinkedIn itself, or in Sales Navigator if you've gone that far with LinkedIn, to actually be able to turn around and have a really good look at who's doing what now. Where have the people that you knew 10 years ago gone? What are they doing? Because I'll bet you they're doing some pretty interesting things. And that's what I did as well. I had to start looking around, had to start looking and casting my net a bit more widely about, right, what kind of work am I going to do? And initially, without a shadow of a doubt, my focus was to set myself up doing the leadership kind of work that I do now, partly with what I was doing at Deloitte University, but elsewhere, but also still leaning in quite a bit to consulting kind of work because I wanted to, play to that strength and the card that I had, if you like, from the work I'd done at Deloitte. So that made good sense. Over time, that's evolved, and it continues to evolve to a point where now I do less and less consulting. It's not to say I don't do any. If somebody offers me, a role that is really interesting and attractive and plays to my skill set, then of course I'm up for that conversation. And it's back to the closed doors thing. Don't turn away stuff. Particularly if you're working on your own and you're running your own small business, you've got to be really careful about what you turn down and how you actually go into into a mode where, do you know what? If you're financially totally sorted and you don't need to worry about it, then lovely. That's a super position to be in. I've kind of never been in that space, so I am acutely conscious that don't look gift horses in the mouth. If you know that there's something coming up that you should be doing and it's actually going to stop you doing something else, well, you need to focus on the work thing, and where's the money coming from? Where are you being paid from doing this? Because it's super super easy to get pulled into a lot of things that you really find fascinating, but actually are actually either paying you nothing or a pittance. And that's not necessarily smart because you've only got so many time units in a day and so many energy units in a day, and you need to use them wisely. So this was all part of my kind of calculus around this. How do I leave when I jump off the Lilypad to go and do what I'm going to go and do next? How is that going to work? What's that going to look like? Is it going to be a kind of comfortable landing, or is it going to be a much more challenging rocky road that I'm now navigating? And I've had both, to be honest. I've had some comfort times, I've had some rocky road times, and I've had some times when I've been too comfortable, and I should have been a bit more focused. And again, I'll talk more about that on a different episode. But I think I suppose in trying to bring this to a close, it was a conscious decision by me that I had reached a plateau which I was not comfortable sitting on. I didn't want to be on that plateaued position where I was still a director for another couple of years. I was going to have to do a huge amount of work to make a partner case, which I'm quietly confident would have been successful, but I didn't know it was going to be successful, and it would have been a battle. And there's always competition in the marketplace. There would always have been challenges. COVID would have come along as well, which would have made life really, really hard. Although obviously COVID was very busy for me in terms of the time I went back to the firm at that point. I'll talk separately about that. But all those things could have played as a kind of advantage, disadvantage, and I was just conscious that right now I think the time's right. I think I need to start thinking about doing something else. I think I don't want to be, as the firm was doing to me, it was trying to put me in a box that said director, but it never really treated me as a director. The firm was really good to me. It recognized my experience and my kind of seniority from the Air Force, and I always had very partner level conversations. I was very in a good place with a lot of the senior partners a lot of the time. So that was great. They applied that lens to it, but they didn't have a mechanism to turn around and accelerate me into being a partner myself. And I don't blame them for that. That's the way the system works, and that's completely fine. But it was a definitely part of the calculation for me as to, right, okay, this is why I now need to think about what I'm going to do. So my advice to anyone that is entering into that kind of world from wherever, to be honest, whether it's a military background or any other sort of background, is again, be clear-eyed about what you're aiming to do. What are your ambitions? What are your aims and objectives? If you're aiming to go in and stay in the same place at the same grade for the rest of your days, well, that's completely fine. If at the same time you want to be ambitious and you want to continue to grow your career, then get advice early from people about how you need to do that and what kind of things you need to do, and make sure you're hitching your wagon to the right horses, because not all partners, not all directors and so on are created equal in terms of influence within organizations like that. And that's true, I suspect, for nearly every kind of organization. There will be people whose opinion matters more in terms of the discussion about who's going to get promoted this year, who's not going to get promoted this year, how's this all going to play out. And you need to be hitching your wagon to the right people. because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that they're looking after you, they're providing the right kind of advice, they're giving you the right kind of mentoring, they're setting you up with the right kind of roles and responsibilities to put you in the best possible position. And some of the time, you'll have a key role in doing that. You could just drift along, as I did, and actually get a lot of experience, get a lot of stuff done, get a lot of exposure to things, but actually leave yourself, as I did, in a position where you're really not very well placed at all to subsequently be promoted. And that was not where I wanted to be. Now, had I been completely content to stay as a director, could have been a different story. But as it was, I wasn't really in that space. I wanted to move on and up. I was firmly of the view that I had the capability to do that. And so, if that wasn't going to happen there, then I needed to find a way to think about what I was going to do next. Could I have gone and looked for another full-time role? Yes, of course. But actually, I was quite excited by the prospect of stepping away, doing my own thing completely, and running my own business. And I remain excited by that because it's really exciting. And again, I'll talk a lot more about that in upcoming episodes. But I thought this kind of second transition story was quite an important one, because I do think it's not just about what happened to me and my own experiences. I think there are lots of things in there that are genuine takeaways for people who are going to find themselves in a similar position. So if that's you, then certainly think hard about some of the things I've said here. And if I can ever be of help to you, then do give me a shout via LinkedIn or whatever, because I would be delighted to provide you the benefit of my advice and experience. So that's always something I'd offer to people. I hope, as ever, it's been interesting and useful to you. I don't want to belabor it too much, but it was a short but very, very fulfilling chapter, if you like, in my overall life. 3.5 years as a director at Deloitte. Lots and lots of tremendous experiences, lots and lots of tremendous people who I'm still very much in touch with. And I loved working there. I loved the environment. I think the whole atmosphere of working in an organization like that was very special, and it was super, super fun. But, all good things come to an end, and it was time to move on. And hence, that's why this conversation has just happened. If you've enjoyed this, if you find it valuable, please share it. Please like, subscribe, follow, all those kind of things. I am amazed constantly that I have 117 countries worth, I think, of listeners stroke viewers nowadays. And yet, and my subscriber numbers on YouTube, it's really, really, really low. So, just subscribe. It doesn't make any difference if you either subsequently never watch another video, but please just subscribe, because that really helps the algorithm for me. It helps move things along. If you're following on a podcast platform, the same thing. Leave me a review, help boost the visibility of the show. That would make a really big difference. Comment again on YouTube, all that kind of stuff really helps. And sharing it, just sharing it widely. I'm going to start getting a bit more active on LinkedIn, because I need to to reshape what I'm doing a little bit in the coming months. So if you're able to to follow me there, connect with me there, then please do that, and I'd be delighted to to make those connections as we go forward as well. If you're willing and able to financially support the show, then please do consider doing that. Again, this sort of stuff is immensely important to me. I love doing the show. I'm very conscious that I'm doing the show for free, essentially, but I equally really appreciate it when I get some help, just to boost the costs of doing it, which obviously has a certain amount of direct costs, but also the time costs, which are not inconsiderable, as you'll appreciate. And so if you're up for that, please go to the Support the Show link in your podcast platform or in YouTube, and you'll find yourself going to patreon.com, and you can join either as a supporter, a champion, or a patron of the show. It won't cost you a lot of money, but it'll make a big, big difference to me. I would be tremendously grateful if you'd at least think about doing that. And either way, I will look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon. And thanks ever so much for listening. I massively appreciate that. Take care. Bye now.